This was a murder that Lil Boosie was charged for and charged with first-degree murder. It was said that Boosie ordered a hit on Terry for $2,800, which was a murder that Marlo Mike supposedly carried out for him. The slaying was the work of a teen hitman with the mind of a maniac, a rogue gunman haunted by a demonic choir of voices hollering, "Kill." Jason Williams, one of Boosie's attorneys, steadfastly maintained Boosie's innocence, alleging that Marlo acted only in concert with Michael "Ghost" Judson and Adrian Pittman. Weeks prior to the murder of Terry, he supposedly robbed Ghost for $720, while Pittman allegedly harbored a long-time grudge against Terry. In the hours leading up to the Boyd shooting, Lil Boosie, Adrian Pittman, and Michael "Ghost" Judson were discussing a letter written to Pittman from an Angola inmate, Lee Lucas. Lucas's letter purportedly stated that prior to Boyd's recent release from prison, he had been making threats about what he was going to do to Boosie upon his release. Boosie told the others that he would pay $25,000 to have Boyd killed. Later that night, Pittman drove Mike and Ghost to North Stevendale Road, in the area of Vermilion Drive. Pittman waited nearby in his van while Mike and Judson attempted to find Boyd. Once Ghost identified Boyd inside a house, Mike began to shoot through the window, ultimately striking Boyd and killing him. Pittman picked up Mike and Ghost and drove them back to Boosie's residence. There, Boosie gave Mike $2,800 for his participation in the shooting. Pittman testified at trial, confirming his, Ghost's, and Mike's involvement in the Boyd shooting. At trial, the state also introduced other crimes evidence, which demonstrated Mike's involvement in 4 other ambush-type shootings. With no DNA evidence or eyewitness to the shooting, the prosecution is hinging its case around a taped jailhouse confession from Marlo Mike, and telephone records that trace him to Boosie's recording studio during the hours before and after the murder. Also presented as evidence, a tattoo that Mike allegedly received 2 weeks after the murder, a depiction of an AK-47 accompanied by the phrase, "Yo Boosie, who's next?" and the lyrics to Boosie's songs 187 and Body Bag, which were recorded on the night of the murder. The motive for the murder stemmed from a letter that Boosie received claiming that Terry was going to jack and slap him. The defense maintains that no such letter exists, and that Boosie and Terry had a friendly relationship, as Boosie had a child with Terry's sister. Besides the murder of Terry, Mike was charged with 5 more murders, as he went on a deranged killing spree, in a time frame of 14 months, which is a lot of murders in such a short period of time, which includes the murder of an individual by the name of Chris Jackson, aka Nusi, a rapper out of Baton Rouge as well, and was found dead inside a home on America Street on February 9, 2009 according to videotaped statements of Marlo Mike, where he accused Lil Boosie of wanting Nusi stamped out. Mike told the authorities in May 2010 that Ghost told Mike that Boosie wanted Nusi dead, as the 2 individuals were beefing, and Mike told him this, as Ghost was unfortunately already dead at that time. Mike also said that Ghost was an accomplice of the murder. Marlo Mike also told the detectives in one of the statements that he spoke with Boosie after the killing and Boosie said, "Ghost told me you all hit that boy. I like that." Portions of the statements were played in State District Judge Don Johnson's courtroom during a hearing on a motion by Marlo Mike's attorney to suppress his statements. Boosie was not charged with the murder of Nusi, but was charged with the murder of Terry Boyd, with the prosecutors alleging that he paid Marlo Mike to kill Boyd. Mike said in one of the interrogation tapes that Terry had disrespected Boosie during a run-in with a fan of Boosie. As for the murder of Nusi, the reason why Boosie wasn't charged with the murder is because Marlo Mike had no direct contact with Boosie leading up to the murder, and because of the fact that Ghost was the one who told Mike about it. Mike also told the authorities that Ghost was present at the time of the shooting and was with Mike as he shot Nusi in the head, and also added that both of them fired shots into the house that Nusi was in. Several days later, Mike told detectives that he fired the shots while Ghost hoisted him up to the window. Mike blamed his jailhouse confession on crooked cops, who allegedly threatened him with lethal injection, and the incarceration of his mother and stepfather. During one dramatic turn, the prosecutor and the court forced the shackled Mike to display his Boosie, whose next tattoo, before the jury, despite the fact that the prosecutor already had blown up photos of the tattoo by her side. Mike also alleged that his confession was coerced by After Mike's testimony, Police Sergeant Chris Johnson took the witness stand and denied making any threats towards Mike. Defense attorneys pointed out that the confession represented only a small fraction of the hours that police had spent interrogating Mike on May 14 and May 17, 2010. According to police, only Mike's confession was taped. During several hours on the stand, Johnson repeatedly denied telling Mike that Boosie had put a hit out on him. But during the videotaped confession, Mike is distinctly seen.
Y'all listening?
Mike was arrested May 14, 2010, on a warrant for aggravated assault and terrorizing, and taken to Louisiana State Police Headquarters for questioning in a string of homicides in Baton Rouge. In 2009 and 2010, Mike was described as the common denominator in 5 separate shootings that claimed 6 lives. Mike is charged with first-degree murder in the deaths of Nusi, Boyd, Marcus Thomas on April 25, 2009, and Charles Matthews and Darrell Bleep Milton on April 1, 2010. Mike also is charged with second-degree murder in the killing of Michael Smith on December 18, 2009. Mike was 16 at the time of Nusi and Thomas deaths, and is therefore not eligible for the death penalty. He's a kid, Mike's court-appointed attorney, Margaret Lagatuda, said. He's an adult in the eyes of the law, the prosecutor responded back. In the beginning of 2010, Ghost was murdered, and this occurred within the first 30 minutes of the new year, and the police was alerted in BR of the first murder of that year. Michael Judson was killed at the age of 22 in the 3300 block of Charles Street near Acadian. According to police, Judson was shot several times. He was taken to a hospital, where he later died from his gunshot wounds. Police said they didn't know why Ghost was killed, but claimed there may have been an argument prior to the shooting. They never got to identify a suspect in connection with the shooting. Witnesses who heard the shots said they thought they were firecrackers. Zellarice Judson, Ghost's mother, was still in a state of shock hours after the shooting. She described the call informing her of the shooting as one no mother should have to go through, and here, she had no idea why anyone would kill her son. He was the kind of kid that always did what I asked. He had a lot of friends, she said. Michael was the seed of my life. Michael was my life, and when they took Michael, they took everything. I wish my child was here. She added it will take time to heal, but she'll never rest until justice is served. Ghost had just celebrated his birthday a few weeks prior. Then there was the murder of Marcus, Gangsta Thomas, who was fatally shot while driving his sport utility vehicle in the 600 block of West McKinley Street, near Nicholson Drive. According to investigation, there were 3 guns that fired at Marcus' vehicle. Marcus wasn't alone at the time, as his friend was left unharmed, but refused to cooperate with the authorities. Marlo Mike was one of the shooters, and admitted to murdering him, as he was brought into the authorities. This was a murder in which Ghost was involved with as well, and another associate, and they sat in a car together and later saw Marcus as he drove by. They drove up to Marcus' vehicle, and the 3 of them opened fire with Mike as the driver, and opened fire himself along with Ghost and their 3rd associate. BOOSIE supposedly hired Ghost to shoot and kill Marcus, as he robbed and snatched BOOSIE off his chain while he was with his daughter, and BOOSIE really wasn't too happy about that, and therefore supposedly hired Ghost to kill Marcus alongside Marlo Mike.
Where everybody at?
I don't know. Go on this one first.
On February 22, 2010, there was another individual that unfortunately got shot as well, and that individual was named Malika Halbert. The incident went down in the 5000 block of Tiago Street. She was sitting in the kitchen just before midnight at her residence when several rounds were fired towards the residence of Malika and struck her in the back, but luckily survived the shooting and was the girlfriend of Noki, who was killed by Marlo Mike later. Noki was at the residence of Malika at the time of the shooting, and it was supposedly a shooting that targeted Noki to begin with. Less than 2 weeks later, on March 6th, there was another shooting again at that same place, targeting Noki a second time with Eddie Stewart and Ryan Carroll. The murder of Noki and Bleak was less than 1 month later, and the shell casings from both shootings were matched, and that's how the police caught them. The murder of Noki was supposedly a head placed by Reginald Youngblood.
A lot of people died, boy. A lot of people died, boy. All young niggas. I'm sitting looking at these nigga faces, all baby faces. Vlad, you sure got something to say, boy. All these babies, man. All them young nigga babies, homie. Them niggas ain't even got hair on their face. Vlad, come on, Vlad. But I'm sick. He was that boy guardian, Vlad.
Then there was Kendrick Johnson, who pleaded guilty to conspiracy to commit first-degree murder in the shooting deaths of Charles Noki Matthews and Daryl Bleak Milton on April 1, 2010.
Bleak?
Matthews and Milton, both from Baton Rouge, were fatally shot while sitting in a car. Johnson was scheduled to stand trial on first-degree murder charges in the killing of Noki and Bleak. Although these murders happened in broad daylight, and there were many people out there, only one person, other than Michael Louding, identified anyone, the prosecutor noted. That witness only identified Kendrick Johnson, and could not identify the other two shooters. The witness credibility would have been a huge factor at trial, due to his extensive criminal history and continuing criminal behavior.
Boosie killed Bleak? Daryl Bleak Milton. I gotta go back and watch this. Look at all these young niggas, man. Come on, Vlad. All these is about Boosie.
Based on Mike's police statements and grand jury testimony in 2010, Mike and 4 others, Johnson, Youngblood, Brian Sneaks Carroll, and Jonathan Rogers, were indicted on first-degree murder charges in the slaying of Noki and Bleak. Mike later recanted, prompting prosecutors to drop the charges against Youngblood, Carroll, and Rogers. After killing Bleak and Noki, Mike stayed at the scene and comforted Bleak's sister. She was very confused by the whole incident. "I just want to know why," she said. "He called me his sister. He was like a brother to me." Other relatives also expressed Mike's willingness to be close to the family following the tragedy. He even showed up at Bleak's funeral, comforting family members, and so on, and perhaps it was to look innocent and make himself look good. Boosie supposedly told Mike to go for cover-up and so that people had nothing to do with it. Bleak was also one of Boosie's best friends, and was killed, while Boosie was locked up for drugs and gun charges, and was locked up for 4 years. They had some conflicts though, as Boosie wasn't too happy, changed his testimony, and told the jury that they had nothing to do with Terry's murder. Even though Mike had admitted to all of the killings prior, he points out that he was forced to mail those statements by his interrogators. As for the co-defendants, in this case, many of them took plea deals getting them 15 to 20 years. With Mike withdrawing his statements, cleared the charges of 2 individuals, and Boosie badass beat the case. The whole reason Boosie was indicted for the murder to begin with was because of the statements Marlo made prior, but sent letters to Boosie apologizing and made up for it testifying on Boosie's behalf. As for the process of trial etc., Marlo Mike's conviction on April 26, 2013, the trial court initially set a sentencing date of September 12, 2013. Subsequently, the trial court decided to move Mike's sentencing hearing to July 9, 2013. On June 6, 2013, at a status hearing, defense counsel argued against this accelerated time frame for sentencing. Particularly, defense counsel stated that the mitigation specialist retained to assist in this case had been working on a timeline centered around a September 12th sentencing date, so an earlier sentencing date would compromise Mike's ability to present mitigation evidence. Defense counsel expressed a concern that expert psychological evaluations could not be secured before the accelerated sentencing date. In response, the state argued that a mitigation specialist was not required in Mike's case because the trial court was an expert in sentencing considerations. Further, the state pointed out that Mike's mitigation specialist, Ms.
They fucked over that kid. They fucked over
that she was qualified to evaluate Marlo Mike. Rather, she was a defense attorney with capital experience, who was retained to assist Mike's appointed counsel. At this time, the state also introduced Mike's school records and memoranda from defense counsel that stated that Mike had previously been evaluated by two mental health professionals, Dr. Joy Terrell and Dr. Andrew Morrison. In deciding to maintain the July 9th sentencing hearing, the trial court noted that it had ordered a pre-sentence investigation report, PSI, and stated that it needed nothing from a mitigation expert. The trial court stated that each side would be allowed to offer mitigating evidence, as outlined in House Bill 152, noting its willingness to sign any orders necessary to secure additional school, medical, or criminal records for consideration. As a compromise, for defense counsel, the trial court stated it would extend the window to file a motion to reconsider sentence, so that Mike could continue to pursue relevant mitigation evidence. On July 3, 2013, defense counsel again appeared before the court to request a delay of sentencing. At that time, defense counsel argued that defendant's PSI was deficient because it addressed the issue of rehabilitation only through a probation and parole officer's perspective, not that of a psychologist. Accordingly, defense counsel requested that the sentencing hearing be delayed to have Mike examined by a psychologist. The trial court ultimately denied this request. On July 9, 2013, the trial court held Mike's sentencing hearing. The state called Major Michael Vaughn, an investigative services officer at Louisiana State Penitentiary. Through Major Vaughn's testimony, the state introduced a letter that Mike mailed to BOOSIE on April 9, 2013. In the letter, Mike wrote that he missed them good old days, F-hose, smoke and perp, clubbin'. In mitigation, defense counsel sought to call their mitigation specialist, Ms. Yackel. The state objected, noting the trial court's earlier statement that it needed nothing from a mitigation specialist. Defense counsel argued that this statement merely meant that the trial court needed nothing from a mitigation specialist to justify an extension of the sentencing date from July 9 back to September 12. Defense counsel contended that to keep the mitigation specialist from testifying would bar Mike from introducing relevant mitigating evidence. The state countered that defense counsel was simply trying to elicit hearsay testimony, such as information from Mike's family members, through a purported expert or mitigation investigator. Defense counsel responded that Ms. Yackel's qualifications would make her an expert authorized to give an opinion about the mitigating factors in Mike's case. Alternatively, defense counsel argued that Ms. Yackel should be allowed to testify as a lay witness. The trial court stated it was not interested in covering Ms. Yackel's resume or what work she had done in Mike's case, but instead wanted to hear from witnesses who know things about Michael Louding. To the extent that Ms. Yackel had any first-hand knowledge about Mike, she would be allowed to testify. However, the trial court would not allow Ms. Yackel to testify to her opinion as to what the law of the land is with respect to this situation. Ms. Yackel ultimately testified to little, other than some of the steps she had taken to investigate Mike's history. The state successfully objected to most of her conclusions as hearsay from a non-expert witness. Following Ms. Yackel's testimony, defense counsel called Mike's mother, Sharon Louding, his aunt, Peggy Palmer, his sister, Lakendra Louding, and a Baton Rouge public defender, Jack Harrison. Mike's family members all testified that Mike had a difficult childhood, including growing up in an overcrowded, impoverished household located in a high-crime area. As a child growing up in this neighborhood, Mike witnessed a man being shot and killed. He performed poorly in school, except for a period of time when he attended a more structured, military-style program. After he completed that program, Mike returned to a traditional school environment, from which he was eventually expelled. Mike's sister noted that he had some anger issues, but she stated that he was never violent toward anyone. At age 14, Mike began to live with BOOSIE. Because of Mike's lifestyle change, his mother began to worry about BOOSIE's influence over him. When Mike once intimated to his mother that he heard voices, she attempted to get him help. However, he refused, believing he would be locked away. All members of Mike's family called to testify at his sentencing hearing said that he would be able to live with them in the event he was paroled in the future. Jack Harrison testified and briefly detailed Mike's history within the juvenile justice system. Defendant had committed juvenile offenses of possession of a handgun and careless operation. He also had some drug charges that were deferred. Mr. Harrison noted that when he visited Mike's home, it was clean, but sparsely furnished. He was struck by the family's poverty. Mr. Harrison also noted that Mike had never been found to be a child in need of care, nor had his family been found to be in need of services. Mike made a brief statement to the trial court, in which he stated that he was sorry to his victims' families, and showed remorse and regret for his actions. Mike also said that had he known then what he knew now, he would not have committed the offenses. The state also read to the court a brief impact statement from Terica Boyd, Terry's sister. Ultimately, the PSI concluded that Mike's prior and present actions indicate that he cannot be rehabilitated. Accordingly, it recommended a sentence of life imprisonment at hard labor without the benefit of probation, parole, or suspension of sentence. In sentencing Mike to life imprisonment at hard labor without the benefit of probation, parole, or suspension of sentence, the trial court cited extensive reasons, noting it was complying with the legislature's pronouncement regarding the procedures to be used for a juvenile homicide offenders. Individualized sentencing hearing. The trial court stated that Mike may in fact find redemption in prison, and that Mike's letter to BOOSIE was encouraging in that it indicated Mike would stay in the Bible. The trial court noted it had an opportunity to review and consider the PSI, especially the details concerning Mike's extensive criminal history, and that the Miller factors had been taken into consideration. The trial court opined that Mike had common sense and was very street smart, notwithstanding the fact that he was 17 at the time of the homicide. The trial court added that it had considered Mike's personal and familial pressures, including the gangsta lifestyle that he may have been lured into by BOOSIE. The trial court also noted the leadership role that Mike played in Boyd's murder. While the trial court noted its belief that every offender has the potential for rehabilitation, it found Mike to be the worst of the worst, and sentenced him to life imprisonment at hard labor, without the benefit of probation, parole, or suspension of sentence. After sentencing, Mike filed a motion to reconsider the sentence, coupled with a motion for leave to complete Mike's mitigation investigation. In this motion, Mike argued that the trial court failed to take into account all relevant mitigating factors under Miller. Defense counsel cited with particularity records that had been rented to show Mike's capacity for rehabilitation. Among these records were SSI records, special education records, juvenile court records, child protective services records, psychiatric records, and medical records. However, most of these records pertain to those in Mike's childhood household, and not necessarily to Mike himself. Mike's resentencing hearing took place on February 7, 2014. Dr. Frederick Sauter, a clinical psychologist, testified on behalf of the defense. The trial court accepted Dr. Sauter is an expert in clinical psychology and in diagnosing post-traumatic stress disorder in veterans. Dr. Sauter interviewed Mike on December 27, 2013, in preparation for the resentencing hearing. He found Mike to have experienced a number of traumatic events that meet the criteria for being considered traumatic stressors. Among these events were an instance where a defendant witnessed someone being murdered, an incident where one of defendant's childhood friends was murdered, an alleged instance of sexual assault against his sister, committed by another family member, and allegations that Mike himself was abused as a child. Dr. Sauter testified that in situations where individuals experience traumatic events, their vulnerability to PTSD is decreased when they have social support. From his interview, Dr. Sauter believed that Mike might not have had that support coming from his biological family. He also noted that people who suffer from PTSD might turn to substance abuse as a way of avoiding their past traumas. Dr. Sauter opined that Mike's extremely impoverished home would not be a traumatic stressor in itself, but the overall context in which any trauma occurred would be an important factor to consider. He characterized Mike's expulsion from school in 7th grade as an adversity. In sum, Dr. in
Downstage right now, just one part. That's Studio One. Got my hand, see. Thought I had it turned. Yeah, pimp on the blimp, baby. That's what he called it.
So this will fit in your ear,
Okay.
and you'll wear that for the duration of the show.
Okay, cool.
Okay, cool.
Man, I'm a child of the South. My grandfather, my grandpappy's pappy was a Confederate, so I am a son of Confederate. I understand that this is heritage, not hate. Ask Ludacris. Ludacris, them, all the Atlanta boys used to wear this. Ludacris used to wear it. Lil Jon and the East Side Boys. Who else? Yeah, let me see. Ludacris, Lil Jon, and David Banner. Yeah, I mean, all of them used to wear Confederate flags in the early 2000s, especially when Lil Jon and them were hot. So nah, man, this is heritage, not hate, for real. Yeah, y'all celebrate King Von. They got a whole mural of King Von in Chicago, and people go fly all over the world and come take pictures in front of a black serial killer. Think about that. So why we can't celebrate General Robert E. Lee?
Hello. Hey, Sam, here's a hood and a mask. So if you get, oh, there's Charleston.
Right here, ready.
Good. Okay, and 3. Here's where you at, babe.
There's Charleston.
Okay, you got a roving mask right here. Yeah. We're gonna join a secret society.
Okay, cool.
Okay, nothing. We can't say anything about Jews
Yeah, I
on
already
the
know.
live stream.
Yeah, it's
And then-
PG-13 here.
Yeah, and then we can't say election fraud too on the live stream.
Okay.
And then the taser we can show, but we can't use it because you can't use a weapon on the live stream either.
So we can't show no knife.
We can show the knife. We just
we
can't
can?
use it. Like.
Or we can't make it go, eh.
No, we can. We just can't stab. You can't hit me with it.
Okay, cool.
We can go like that, but we can't hit. We can't hit.
Alright, 10 seconds. 10, 9, 8.
This is live, y'all, so I gotta let y'all go.